I know that I need to write a newsletter and shoot an actual ministry update video, but I've got these intrusive thoughts that keep dwelling with me. To quote an old Modest Mouse song, my thoughts were so loud I couldn't hear my mouth. And a lot of those thoughts are about this kind of dangerous place that we're in. It's not a physical danger. I'm not worried about crime in Durban or health issues. It's something way more subtle and deceptive. And if you're supporting any missionaries or thinking about becoming a missionary yourself, you need to know about this. ABWE has this brilliant strategy with a class called Departure Readiness Training. They hold it back until missionaries hit 75% of their support goal. And at first glance, it kind of seems like odd timing. Why not give us all the training right up front? But here's the wisdom. Between missionary orientation and that 75% mark, every missionary faces this mental pitfall. It's a trap that their training helps correct, but by then most of us have already stumbled into it. And the trap is that we start romanticizing the mission field. In the quiet moments when we're dreaming about Durban, our hearts and our minds start to paint these perfect pictures. You know, sunset over the Indian Ocean, the smell of curry drifting through the local markets, right? Like our family settling into a rhythm that finally feels right and fits us. And look, Durban will be beautiful. God picked that spot for us. But this romanticizing, it sneaks up on us during support raising because we're in this strange space of knowing exactly where we're headed, but having no control over when we'll get there. So today we're at 26% of our support goal. And that may not sound like much, but here's what's wild. The average missionary takes between a year and a half and 2 full years to get fully funded. We know folks who have been pre-field for more than 5 years. We're at 26% in just over 2 months. God's moving fast. But regardless of how fast or slow we go, this waiting season does something to your mind. I mean, let's look at the current reality. We're living with my parents right now. They are wonderful people who love us deeply. But when you stack 2 family cultures under one roof, you start dreaming about having your own space again. And that's where this mental trap gets sneaky, because right now, every little friction point makes us think, well, in South Africa, TV's too loud. In South Africa, we're going to have our own living room. Different dinner time expectations throwing off our sleep schedules. In South Africa, we'll set our own routine. Missing a sense of peace and quiet at the end of the day? Oh, well, in South Africa, you see the pattern? We kind of build this perfect mental picture, and it's not just home life. We do it with ministry, too. Every church presentation that doesn't quite land, or every support letter that takes longer than expected to get a response, we tell ourselves it's all going to be different once we're there. But this is what ABWE veterans keep telling us. Ministry in Durban will have its own challenges. We'll need to hunt for a house, navigate government paperwork. We got to buy 2 cars and deal with transferring the money between the banks. And that's just logistics. The mental load is interesting too. Every missionary I've talked to, whether they served in Romania, or Portugal, or Nicaragua, they say the same thing about money. Don't try to constantly translate everything in your head. When we see that something costs 324 Rand, we want to instinctually divide by about 20, figure it's maybe about $16, decide if it's worth it, but all of those mental gymnastics just wear you down. Instead, they say to try to think in your currency. For us, that's Rand. You have 600 Rand in your pocket. This item is 324 Rand. Simple math. No translation needed. And it's fascinating because it mirrors what linguists say about language learning. The breakthrough comes when you stop translating and you just start thinking in the new language. And we're going to face that with Zulu eventually. And even though English is common in Durban, I want to learn some Afrikaans too. As a white person there, people are going to try to speak to me in Afrikaans first. If I can meet them where they are, even briefly before switching to English, that builds bridges. And so all of these changes, the family routines, financial thinking, language learning, it's all going to stack up, and it's all going to hit right when we're also trying to start ministry relationships and figure out what kind of grocery store has the best produce and how to help our girls adjust to a new life. So I'm not trying to be pessimistic in response to being overly optimistic. I'm trying to have a shade of wisdom and be realistic. These challenges aren't roadblocks. These challenges are part of the journey that God's called us to. And right now, in this waiting season at 26% support, we have to guard against painting everything in South Africa with rose-colored glasses. Let me tell you about an experience I had in first grade. I'm sitting in my tiny Christian school church classroom when a teacher's aide brings in a special treat for the kids with crackers and orange marmalade. Now, I love peanut butter and jelly. What kid doesn't, right? But I'm so used to strawberry and grape being the only options. Orange marmalade fascinated me because it was different. When I tried it, something clicked. I went home that day begging my mom to buy some, and she gave me this kind of puzzled look. Where did you learn about orange marmalade? I've always been fascinated with things that are different. It showed up everywhere. When I'd visit my great Aunt Jane and great Uncle Joe, they never had the usual cookies or candies. They had Fig Newtons. And I loved them, not just because they're good, but because they were Uncle Joe and Aunt Jane's special thing. Maybe it was just because they were old, but they loved Fig Newtons, and I loved them because they were theirs. Then there was an elderly church lady who offered me hot tea one day when my mom was visiting with her. And my brain immediately went to sweet tea, and I asked her if that's what it was like. But she said it's hot tea, like British people drink. But she didn't have black tea, she had orange spice. And honestly, the first sip without sugar was not great. But after she added some sweetener, I came to really enjoy it. And then I found myself asking, do you have any Fig Newtons? Because in my young mind, fancy tea needed fancy cookies, and because she was an old person, of course she had them. But these aren't just random moments. Like when I look back now, I see God's fingerprints all over my dumb little preferences for things outside the norm. Let me tell you a wild thing. A recent study ranked 501 small towns across America for cultural diversity, and my hometown of Clarksburg, West Virginia, is dead last. The least culturally diverse place in the entire country. However, number one for people who speak English. 0.24% of people in Clarksburg speak Spanish or any other language. I got my oil changed last week, and when the guy pulled the sticker from inside my windshield and looked at it, he saw that my last oil change was in Texas, and asked me why. So I mentioned becoming a missionary, and he looked at me, blank face, jaw open, and said, "Missionary? Is that like church?" And I said, "Yeah, it's taking church and teaching other people about Jesus." And he nodded and then walked away and had a cigarette. That's where I'm from, where grown men who survive the entire No Child Left Behind educational system don't have an idea what a missionary is. Meanwhile, Abby spent her college years praying that God would bring her a missionary kid to marry. She figured only someone who grew up on the mission field could understand her heart. Instead, God was quietly raising up a weirdo in West Virginia who had been unconsciously preparing for cross-cultural ministry since before my first bite of orange marmalade. So, this is the beautiful tension that we're living in. God has clearly called us to Durban, Confirmations keep rolling in from the most unexpected places and people. Our support level is growing. Doors are opening. But we're in this gap between calling and arrival. And we have to guard our hearts. Not against doubt. That's not our battle. Our battle is against a sparkly, a perfect version of missionary life that we're tempted to create in our minds. When you're living with your parents, TV shows blaring down the hall, eating dinner 2 hours later than your kids are used to, it's easy to mentally escape to a perfect South African future. But that's not fair to where God has us right now, and it's not fair to where He's taking us. Some missionaries take 3 years to get to the field. Some take 5. We met one couple who's been pre-field for 7 years. They have their reasons, their stories, some wild circumstances. But here we are, moving faster than average and feeling a little bit like we're standing still. I'm not trying to complain, I'm just being honest. And you know what keeps me grounded in all of this? Fig Newtons, orange marmalade. Tiny little things that God has used to take a kid from the least culturally diverse area of America and prepare him for a life of cross-cultural ministry. It reminds me He's always working, even when, maybe especially when, we can't see the full picture. So the reality is, some things in Durban are going to be hard. Most things are going to be amazing, but all of it, every single part of it, is going to be exactly where God wants us to be. So while we're here drinking orange spiced tea and my parents' TV blasting in the background, or when we're there learning how many rand a gallon of milk costs and budgeting accordingly, our job isn't to romanticize the future, and our job isn't to endure the present. Our job is to be faithful right here, right now, while keeping our eyes fixed on the one who called us in the first place. You know, we probably should talk about what June and July look like with 6 weeks of traveling on the road and all the ways that God has been moving, and we've been processing all these thoughts. I'm going to shoot that update next, but for now, I just need to get this off my chest, because maybe you're supporting another missionary who's in this strange season just like us. Or maybe you're thinking about missions yourself. Just remember, God isn't just preparing the field for the missionary, He's preparing the missionary for the field. He has been all along. So I'll close with a fresh perspective of one of my favorite worship songs as I think about orange marmalade. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing the goodness of God. Be blessed. We'll talk soon.